Have you ever looked into someone's eyes? Someone who once truly saw you and realized they no longer do? Their tone changed, their energy dimmed. The way they used to listen, to smile, to care, it's gone. And suddenly, you start asking yourself questions that tear at your peace. What happened? Where did I go wrong? Did I lose them? Or did I lose myself? What? If you've ever felt that quiet ache of becoming invisible to someone you once trusted, you're not alone. Because behind every smile that fades, behind every silence that grows too heavy, there's a storm inside us. A storm made of confusion, anger, sadness, and a desperate wish to understand. You replay every moment, every word, every memory, trying to find the exact place where things started to fall apart. You wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was something you could have said differently. But here's the truth that Stoicism teaches us, one that can feel brutal at first, but liberating once you really see it. You were never meant to control how others see you. You were only meant to master how you see yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When someone stops valuing you, that's an outside event. Painful, yes. Uncomfortable, absolutely. But your reaction, your interpretation, that belongs entirely to you. That's where your freedom begins. We often think our worth is a mirror, that it depends on how others reflect us. When they stop reflecting kindness, we panic. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. The light was never theirs to give you. It's been inside you the whole time. Let's be honest, it hurts deeply when someone withdraws their affection. Our minds crave answers, closure, something to explain the loss. But sometimes, in chasing those answers, we lose something far more important. Our calm, our dignity. The Stoics called that the loss of inner stillness, the moment we hand over the steering wheel of our peace to someone else's behavior. So how do we get it back? There's one simple, powerful Stoic trick. Not 10. Not a list of complex rituals. Just one. It's this. Change your relationship with yourself. Don't try to control the other person. Don't chase them. Instead, turn inward and rebuild the foundation that no one else can touch. Think about it this way. Imagine you're standing in a storm. The wind is fierce, the sky dark, everything shaking. You can't stop the storm, but you can anchor yourself so it doesn't blow you away. That anchor is your inner judgment, your ability to decide how you see what's happening. Someone stopped valuing you? That's a fact. But whether you let that fact define your worth, that's a choice. The Stoics would say, don't hand your peace to what you cannot control, because the moment you do, you become a prisoner of someone else's perception. And if their affection wavers as human emotions often do, your whole sense of self collapses with it. But when you anchor inward, something incredible happens. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop begging for respect, you embody it. You stop chasing validation, you generate it. This is what Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus were trying to teach. The only thing that truly belongs to you is your judgment, your ability to interpret events and assign them meaning. And when you master that, no one can devalue you again. Maybe right now, you feel like your heart is breaking. Maybe you feel invisible to someone you love. But let me ask you something. When did you last value your own presence the way you wanted them to? When did you last treat your peace as sacred, your time as precious, your heart as something worth protecting? We often demand others recognize our worth, while quietly abandoning it ourselves. We expect them to fill the space inside us that only we can fill. The Stoics would tell you, stop outsourcing your worth. The world is unstable. People change. Priorities shift. But your relationship with yourself, that's the one thing you can rebuild and rely on. Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When someone stops valuing you, it's not the end of your story, it's the beginning of self-mastery. So here's the practice, and yes, it's simple, but not easy. When you feel ignored or forgotten, pause. Take a deep breath. Don't send that message you'll regret. Don't try to remind them of your worth through words. Remind yourself of it through silence. Your silence isn't weakness, it's self-command. It's the moment you choose dignity over desperation. It's the space where peace begins to grow again. If you can do that once, even just once, you'll start to feel something shift. You'll begin to sense a calm that doesn't depend on someone's apology. You'll rediscover a strength that doesn't beg to be seen. And that calm, that strength, that's the beginning of Stoic freedom. Remember this, you cannot make anyone value you by shrinking yourself to fit their vision. But you can make yourself unshakable by expanding your vision of who you are. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about caring wisely, starting with yourself. When someone stops valuing you, you don't lose your worth. You lose the illusion that your worth was ever in their hands. So instead of asking, "Why don't they see me anymore?" ask, "Why did I stop seeing myself?" That's where the Stoic path begins, not in changing others, but in returning home to your own center. Because peace isn't found when everyone loves you again. Peace begins when you stop needing them to. And from that silence, that grounded stillness, you rise again, calm, clear. So when the world grows cold, remember this one Stoic truth. You can't control who values you, but you can always control how much you value yourself. And that changes everything. Have you ever noticed how easily we hand over the keys to our self-worth? A kind word makes us feel alive. A cold silence makes us question everything about ourselves. It's as if our entire sense of value depends on how others see us, their attention, their praise, their approval. But what happens when that attention fades? When the messages slow down, the conversations dry up, and suddenly, the warmth turns into indifference? Most of us panic. We start spinning stories in our minds thinking, "What did I do wrong? Why don't they see my worth anymore?" But here's the truth. Nothing about your worth has changed. What's changed is where you've anchored it. The Stoics taught that every person has two kinds of anchors, one in the world outside and one inside the self. When you anchor your value in the world outside, in someone's opinion, in social validation, in temporary attention, you are at the mercy of the waves. The moment that person withdraws, you drift. The moment you lose their approval, you sink. But when you anchor within, when your worth depends on your principles, your effort, your integrity, you become unshakable. Even when the sea of life gets rough, you stand firm, because your foundation isn't built on anyone else's recognition. Think about it. If someone's praise can make you feel worthy, their silence can make you feel worthless. That's not power, that's dependency. And Stoicism is about reclaiming your power, one moment of awareness at a time. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you start defining your worth by what you think of yourself, not what others think, your entire world begins to shift. Here's where self-differentiation comes in. It's one of the most powerful Stoic practices, though the Stoics didn't use that modern term. They lived it every day. It means separating who you are from how others treat you. When someone stops valuing you, the mind naturally wants to ask, "Why don't they appreciate me anymore?" But the Stoic reframes that question. Instead, they ask, "What values do I refuse to surrender, even when I'm not being valued?" See the shift? One question makes you a victim of circumstance. The other makes you the author of your own story. Because when you focus on what you will not compromise, your kindness, your honesty, your calm, your self-respect, you step out of the storm and back into control. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastering yourself begins with deciding which parts of you are not for sale. Your dignity, your peace, your standards. Let's take a moment to visualize this. Imagine you're in a room with someone who slowly stops engaging. They look at their phone, they ignore your words, They give half-hearted replies. You feel that familiar sting in your chest, that urge to say something, to fix it, to make them notice you again. But instead, you breathe. You tell yourself, their attention is not the measure of my worth. That pause, that single breath, is your moment of freedom. It may seem small, almost insignificant, but that's where the Stoics' real strength lies. In consistency. Every time you choose calm over reaction, reflection over desperation, you train your mind to return home to your center. And over time, that consistency becomes armor. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." The bravery he spoke of wasn't about battlefields or victories. It was about the courage to stay rooted in your values, even when life tempts you to abandon them. Now, let's talk about boundaries, not the cold, rigid kind built from anger, but the warm, firm ones built from self-respect. Stoics didn't isolate themselves from the world. They simply refused to let the world decide their inner state. A healthy boundary isn't saying, "I don't care about you." It's saying, "I care about myself enough not to beg for love where it's not freely given." Boundaries protect dignity. They remind others and yourself that your energy is sacred. They are not walls that shut people out, but doors that you open and close with discernment. Ask yourself this: how many times have you overextended your kindness just to earn someone's attention? How many times have you said yes when your soul was begging you to say no? That's what happens when your worth is tethered to how others see you. You bend until you break. The Stoic path is the opposite. It's the art of standing tall, not in pride, but in peace. When you know who you are, you no longer chase being seen. Consistency is the secret ingredient that turns Stoic ideas into strength. You can't master peace in a single day. It's something you practice every time life challenges you. When someone disrespects you, that's your training. When someone withdraws their attention, that's your classroom. When silence hurts, that's your exam. And every time you pause, breathe, and remember your worth, you pass. But remember this: Stoic calm isn't emotionless. It's emotional maturity. It's the power to feel deeply, yet not drown. To care, yet not cling. To love, yet not lose yourself. That's what makes it so rare and so powerful. I want to leave you with a simple practice, one that has helped many who've walked this path before. The next time you feel undervalued, don't ask, "Why don't they see my worth?" Ask instead, "What am I still refusing to see about my own?" Then take one slow breath. Place your hand over your heart and silently say, "My worth is not up for debate." Say it again when the ache returns. Say it when your mind starts replaying memories that hurt. Say it when you feel tempted to chase, because each repetition builds strength, like a muscle that learns not to flinch every time it's tested. That's the Stoic way. Quiet, deliberate, disciplined. No drama, no begging, no chaos. The world will always have people who fail to see your worth. But that's not your tragedy, it's their limitation. Your task isn't to convince them. It's to remember who you are without their applause. So anchor your value within. Draw your line from dignity, not resentment. And practice this every day, not until you feel strong, but until strength becomes your natural state. Because true confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to be proven. It's the quiet knowing that even if the world goes silent, you remain. There's a moment in every person's life when the world feels unfair, when someone hurts you, when life disappoints you, when things don't go the way you planned. And in that moment, your instinct screams, "Why me?" You feel anger, confusion, sadness. You want answers, maybe even justice. But the Stoics would tell you something radically different. It's not what happens to you that matters. It's how you respond to it. That's Epictetus, a man born into slavery, crippled, and yet one of the freest minds in history. He didn't control his circumstances. He couldn't change his past, but he mastered the one thing no one could take away: his response. Think about that for a second. If someone insults you, that insult only hurts when you believe it. If someone rejects you, That rejection only defines you when you accept their version of your worth. The Stoics understood a truth that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. You can't control the world, but you can always control the meaning you give to it. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, a man surrounded by betrayal, politics, and chaos, wrote quietly in his journal, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." One overgodded deaths, that's not denial, that's discipline. Marcus wasn't pretending the world didn't hurt. He was reminding himself that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Pain is what happens. Suffering is what you do with what happens. One is external. The other lives entirely in your judgment. Ask yourself, how many times have you replayed a painful moment long after it ended? A breakup, a betrayal, a conversation that cut too deep. The event ended. That's not the world hurting you anymore. That's you hurting yourself by refusing to let go. And Stoicism says, stop rehearsing the wound. Marcus Aurelius also said, just do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. Simple, but powerful. Because when you stop trying to control outcomes, who likes you, who apologizes, who changes, and instead focus only on your own conduct, something incredible happens. Peace returns. You can't stop people from judging you, but you can act with integrity. You can't stop others from lying, but you can remain honest. You can't stop life from being unpredictable, but you can stop it from shaking your inner balance. Doing the right thing, even when the world doesn't reward you, is what gives you freedom. Because real strength isn't about winning every battle, it's about refusing to lose yourself in the process. Seneca, another great Stoic thinker, once wrote, "A brave man is free." At first that sounds poetic, but what he meant is deeply practical. Courage, in the Stoic sense, isn't about fighting wars or climbing mountains. It's about standing firm in truth when it would be easier to bend. It's about saying, I will not let external chaos decide who I am inside. That's freedom. Not the kind that depends on perfect conditions, but the kind that endures even when everything around you falls apart. Think about the last time you faced a painful situation. Maybe someone betrayed your trust. Maybe life didn't turn out the way you expected. Did you react impulsively? Or did you pause, breathe, and remind yourself, this is outside my control, but my reaction is mine? That pause, that small gap between stimulus and response, is where the entire philosophy of Stoicism lives. It's where pain turns into wisdom. It's where you stop being a victim of events and become the author of your own story. Seneca also warned us about something subtle but dangerous, living according to opinion rather than nature. He said, to live according to nature is never poor. To live according to opinion is never rich. What does that mean today? It means that when you measure your worth by what others think, likes, praise, validation, you will always feel poor, even if you have everything. Because external approval is a moving target. You'll never hit it for long. But when you live according to your nature, your principles, your values, your sense of right, you are rich, no matter how others see you. A Stoic doesn't wake up asking, who will approve of me today? A Stoic wakes up asking, what's the right thing to do? There's a story that illustrates this perfectly. A man once complained to Epictetus that people were gossiping about him and spreading lies. Epictetus smiled and said, did you expect them to gossip about your virtues instead? It wasn't sarcasm. It was a reminder that the world behaves, as the world does, unpredictable, noisy, and unfair. Your peace begins the moment you stop expecting it to be otherwise. So the next time someone disrespects you or life throws you off balance, ask yourself, what part of this is truly under my control? Usually, the answer is just one thing, your response, and in that moment, you have a choice. You can let your emotions lead and lose your calm, or you can lead your emotions and keep your power. Every time you choose composure over chaos, you grow stronger. Every time you act with integrity when no one is watching, you build unshakable character. Every time you forgive instead of retaliate, you expand your freedom. Because in the end, Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about mastering it. It's about feeling deeply, but not being ruled by what you feel. It's about remembering that your worth, your peace, your dignity, none of these depend on external approval. That's why Stoicism still matters today, maybe more than ever. In a world addicted to reaction, a Stoic pauses. In a world obsessed with validation, a Stoic returns inward. In a world full of noise, a Stoic chooses silence not because they don't care, but because they care about what truly matters. So when life next challenges you, when someone misunderstands you, when plans collapse, when the storm comes, remember these simple truths from the ancient philosophers. From Epictetus, it's not what happens, but how you respond. From Marcus Aurelius, choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. From Seneca, the brave are free. Together they form a roadmap, not to escape life, but to live it well. To stay calm in the face of chaos, to remain kind in the presence of cruelty, to keep your dignity when everything else falls away. That's the Stoic path. That's the art of unshakable peace. And if you can live by that even just a little more each day, you'll discover something extraordinary. No matter what happens around you, you are always free within. It rarely happens all at once. The moment someone stops valuing you isn't loud, dramatic, or obvious. There's no sudden explosion, no goodbye speech, no grand betrayal. It starts quietly in small, almost invisible ways. They reply a little slower. Their words feel colder. The energy shifts. And at first, you tell yourself it's nothing. They're just busy. They'll come around. But deep down, you feel it, that subtle withdrawal, that quiet fading of presence. What once felt warm and alive now feels distant and uncertain. That's the silent shift. And if you've ever experienced it, you know how much it hurts precisely because it's silent. No explanation, no closure. Just an invisible space growing between you and the person who used to see you. When that happens, the mind becomes your worst battlefield. You start analyzing every moment, every word, every look. You rewind conversations, trying to pinpoint where you went wrong. You ask yourself questions that only deepen the pain. Did I say something wrong? Am I not enough anymore? Why don't they care the way they used to? This is the trap the Stoics warned us about, the danger of tying your sense of worth to someone else's perception. Because when their attention shifts, your confidence collapses with it. When their tone cools, your self-esteem freezes too. And here's the hard truth. When you let someone's recognition define your value, you've handed them power over your peace. Their silence becomes your suffering. Their distance becomes your self-doubt. And in that moment, you're no longer living freely, you're living reactively. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, faced this very human pain centuries ago. He wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." At first glance, that sounds impossible. How can you choose not to feel hurt? But what he meant was this: pain is inevitable, but the meaning you attach to it is optional. When someone grows distant, your mind immediately tries to explain it. It invents stories: I must have done something wrong. They found someone better. Maybe I'm just not worth it. But the Stoic response is to stop writing stories and start observing facts. The fact is, they've changed. The fact is, they've pulled away. They've pulled away. The fact is, that's outside your control. What remains within your control is how you choose to interpret it and how you choose to respond. Imagine you're holding a glass of water. It's light at first, easy to carry, but the longer you hold it, the heavier it becomes. That's what happens when you hold on to emotional weight, the confusion, the rejection, the what-ifs. The glass doesn't change, your grip does. Stoicism teaches you to set the glass down, to stop gripping pain that isn't yours to carry anymore. Epictetus said it simply: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You cannot control whether someone stops valuing you, that's their story. But you can control whether you let that story define your self-worth. You can choose dignity over desperation. You can choose stillness over chasing. You can choose to remain anchored in who you are even as others drift away. The Stoic approach isn't about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about facing that hurt with clarity instead of illusion. You don't have to deny the pain. You just have to see it for what it is: temporary, external, and not a reflection of your true value. When someone no longer values you, the instinct is to fight against reality, to prove yourself, to fix things. But Stoicism says, stop fighting what is, because every ounce of energy you spend resisting reality is energy you steal from your own peace. Seneca once wrote, "To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden." In other words, when you stop reacting in panic, the situation loses its power over you. So instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What can I control right now?" And the answer is always the same. Let me share something personal. There was a time in my life when someone I deeply cared about slowly drifted away. No fights, no betrayal, just silence. And I spent weeks trying to fill the silence with meaning, searching for reasons, rewriting reality to protect my ego. But one day, I stopped. I sat in that silence and said to myself, maybe this isn't a loss. Maybe it's just life reminding me to return home to myself. That was the beginning of peace. Because when you stop chasing explanations from others, you start finding truth within yourself. The silent shift, painful as it is also sacred. It's an invitation to practice the deepest Stoic virtue, acceptance, without bitterness. Acceptance doesn't mean you approve of what happened. It means you stop denying what is. You stop wasting energy trying to change what you can't control. You stop defining yourself by someone else's absence. When you accept reality clearly, without resentment, without illusions, clarity replaces confusion, and clarity is power. The next time you notice someone pulling away, pause before you chase. Observe before you assume. Breathe before you blame. And remind yourself, their change in behavior does not equal your loss of worth. The world outside will always be unstable. People will change, drift, forget. But your worth? That's anchored deep within you. No one can touch it unless you hand it to them. The Stoics would say, don't hand it over. Keep it where it belongs. In your judgment, your discipline, your peace. Because peace is not found when everyone values you again. Peace begins when you stop needing them to. So yes, the silent shift hurts, but it also teaches. It teaches you where you've placed your identity. It teaches you the difference between love and dependency. It teaches you that silence isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's redirection. When someone stops valuing you, let them. Not out of pride, but out of peace. Because the moment you stop begging to be seen is the moment you finally start seeing yourself. We often confuse detachment with not caring. People hear the word detachment and imagine a person who's cold, distant, emotionless, someone who doesn't love, doesn't feel, doesn't get hurt. But that's not detachment. That's numbness. And the Stoics never taught numbness. Stoic detachment isn't about turning off your heart, it's about protecting its center. It's the art of caring deeply, but not being destroyed when things don't go your way. It's about love without possession, peace without control, and connection without dependence. Let's face it, most of us were never taught how to love without losing ourselves. We were taught to hold tightly, to prove our worth, to constantly give, even when it empties us. We mistake attachment for intimacy, obsession for love, and dependency for devotion. And that's why so many people suffer when others pull away, because their identity was built around being needed. The Stoics saw love differently. They believed that the highest form of love is free, not fragile. It's not about holding someone so tightly that they can't breathe. It's about standing beside them with strength, even if they choose to walk a different path. Epictetus said, when you kiss your child goodnight, whisper to yourself, they are mortal. He wasn't being morbid. He was being wise. He was reminding us to love what we have while we have it, without pretending it will last forever. That's detachment, to love fully, but without illusion. To give your best, but not collapse if it isn't returned. To remain open-hearted, but not enslaved by hope or fear. Here's a truth we rarely admit. Most of what we call love is really control in disguise. We want people to act a certain way, feel a certain way, stay a certain way. And when they don't, we feel betrayed, not because they wronged us, but because they dared to be free. But the Stoic way is different. It says, you can't control how long something lasts, but you can control how gracefully you let it go. You can't control whether someone stays, but you can control whether you lose your peace trying to hold them. So when you practice detachment, you're not saying, I don't care. You're saying, I care, but I won't lose myself in caring. That's strength. That's maturity. That's love purified by wisdom. Let me ask you something. How many times have you tried to force a relationship to work? You gave more, texted more, tried harder, but the more you chased, and then one day you realize you were fighting not for love, but for control. That's the trap. Because love born from fear, fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten is never love. It's attachment. And attachment always breeds suffering. The Stoics teach us to love with open hands, not clenched fists. When you let go of control, you give space for love to grow naturally or to fade with dignity. Either way, you remain whole. Marcus Aurelius wrote, accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. Notice the second half. With all your heart. Detachment doesn't mean half-hearted love. It means wholehearted love. Minus the chains. You can love deeply and be free. You can care passionately and stay centered. Because detachment isn't distance, it's balance. It's saying, I love you, but I also love myself. It's saying, I'm here for you, but I won't abandon me. It's the quiet confidence that says, I can give without losing. So, how do you practice this kind of detachment? It starts with awareness. The moment you feel anxious about someone's attention, pause. Ask yourself, am I loving them or am I clinging to them? If it feels heavy, desperate, if it feels calm, generous, peaceful, that's love. Then, bring your focus back to your center, your breath, your values, your actions, because that's where true stability lives. You can't build inner peace on someone else's behavior. You can only build it on your own self-respect. Reinvest the energy you once spent overthinking, overgiving, over-explaining into growth, into learning, into strengthening your foundation. Read, reflect, create, move, breathe. That's not selfish, it's sacred maintenance. You're not abandoning love. You're nourishing the person who gives it. Here's something that changed the way I see relationships forever. Not everyone you lose is a loss. Sometimes people leave to make room for peace. Sometimes distance is the universe's way of rebalancing your energy. Detachment allows you to see that clearly, to stop taking everything personally and start seeing everything purposefully. When someone pulls away, you don't chase, you don't punish, you simply observe. You let time reveal what's real. And while you wait, you keep building yourself. Seneca once said, he who is brave is free. That applies to love too. It takes courage to let things flow, to stop forcing what no longer fits. It takes strength to say, I wish you well, and mean it without bitterness, without drama, without resentment. That's not disinterest. That's emotional mastery. That's Stoic freedom in practice. Detachment, then, is not the end of love, it's the elevation of love. It's what happens when affection matures into wisdom, when care becomes conscious, when love stops being a transaction and starts being a gift. Because love rooted in fear says, I need you, but love rooted in strength says, I choose you, but I'll be fine if you choose differently. And made Dinner wide sebdal the som, gas and strantarm in many ubs. Going have the size of the Pass of Dallas, by nigh Dallas, gas Dallas and Abel. And that difference, that quiet, steady confidence, is what makes a Stoic heart unbreakable. So if you're listening to this right now, and you're tired of giving too much, trying too hard, caring too deeply for people who don't meet you halfway, this is your reminder. You can love without losing. You can give without draining. You can care without clinging. That's what true detachment looks like. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the presence of wisdom. It's not a wall, it's a door, opening toward peace. And when you walk through that door, something beautiful happens. You stop chasing what's running away, and you start attracting what's meant to stay. There's a kind of debt no one talks about. It's not financial, it's emotional, and it's one of the heaviest things you can carry. You know what it feels like when someone hurts you, leaves you, or stops caring, yet you still feel like you owe them something. Maybe you feel like you owe them an explanation, a second chance, or closure. Maybe you lie awake at night, rehearsing what you would say if they finally listened. Or maybe you replay old memories, trying to fix them in your mind as if rewriting the past could heal the present. That's emotional debt. The belief that you owe someone proof of your worth or payment for love that was never fairly exchanged. And it's one of the quietest forms of self-betrayal. When you're caught in emotional debt, you start living like you're still being graded, waiting for someone else to stamp approved on your heart. You tell yourself, if I can just explain, if I can make them see, then I'll finally be free. Dang. Bane. Bud you. Bane the say be great main. In the song, with the scroll, their brajos, and forfeit in podabling a pud. But freedom never comes that way, because every time you try to pay back the past through overthinking, overgiving, or over-apologizing, you deepen the debt instead of clearing it. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. They knew that clinging to what you can't control is the fastest way to lose peace. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you're in emotional debt, your mind becomes a loan office for approval. Every thought is an installment. Every sleepless night is a payment. You keep giving energy to something that doesn't give back, and eventually, your soul feels bankrupt. Think about this for a second. How many hours of peace have you spent repaying people who stopped investing in you long ago? How many times have you written messages you'll never send, or stalked social media pages hoping for a sign of remorse? How many moments of stillness have you traded for the illusion of closure? That's the cruel thing about emotional debt. It doesn't just take from your past. It steals from your future. Because every minute you spend trying to prove your worth to someone who's gone is a minute you're not proving it to yourself. The Stoic solution isn't revenge. It isn't getting even. It's something far more radical. Withdraw your energy. Not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Stop making emotional payments to relationships that no longer exist. Stop feeding your peace to the ghosts of conversations that will never happen. Stop waiting for someone else to forgive you, see you, or validate you, and start giving that to yourself. Epictetus said, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about the things." In other words, the pain doesn't live in what happened, it lives in how long you keep reliving it. You don't need their apology to move on. You don't need their understanding to heal. You just need to stop renting your peace to a story that's already over. Here's something powerful to remember. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing. You don't owe anyone continued access to your energy just because you once gave it freely. And you definitely don't owe anyone the right to define your worth after they've already mishandled it. If you've been waiting for closure, I'll tell you something that might sting at first, but will set you free. Closure isn't something you get from another person. It's something you decide for yourself. The Stoics would call this self-sovereignty. It means reclaiming ownership of your mind. It means saying, "I choose peace, even if they never explain. Because waiting for an apology is like waiting for a ship at the airport, it's never coming. So how do you repay emotional debt? You don't. You cancel it. You write it off. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve freedom. Take all the energy you've been giving away, the hours of overthinking, the emotional exhaustion, the what-ifs, and reinvest it. Reinvest it into becoming stronger, calmer, wiser. Reinvest it into reading, journaling, learning. Reinvest it into the parts of you that were neglected while you were busy keeping score. Every time you choose yourself, you're making a new deposit into your peace account. Every time you stop chasing answers, you earn interest in clarity. And one day, you'll realize the account is full again, not because someone paid you back, but because you stopped giving away what wasn't owed. Let me give you a small, real-life reflection. There was a time when I couldn't stop thinking about someone who had hurt me deeply. I kept waiting for a message, a conversation, a moment of redemption. But months passed. Nothing came. And one day, while walking alone, I realized it wasn't them I was waiting for. It was me. I was waiting for myself to stop seeking closure outside and to finally close the door from within. That moment didn't come with fireworks. It came with silence. But it was the kind of silence that felt clean, like breathing after a long storm. That's what emotional freedom feels like. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Pain isn't just pain, it's an opportunity to reclaim what you've given away. When you stop paying emotional debt, you rediscover your strength, your independence, your ability to rise without being rescued. So if you find yourself haunted by the need to explain, prove, or repair, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself, am I trying to pay a debt that no longer exists? Because sometimes peace isn't something you earn. The truth is, you don't owe anyone your peace. Thanks for watching. Not the person who left, not the one who misunderstood you, not the one who took your kindness for granted. Your only debt, if you can even call it that, is to your own soul. To heal it, to protect it, to honor it. And when you do, you'll find that life becomes lighter, not because everyone paid what they owed, but because you stopped carrying what wasn't yours. So tonight, when your mind starts replaying old scenes, I forgive myself for overinvesting. I release the need for closure. I choose peace over proof. And then, rest. Because you've paid enough. Now it's time to live free. There comes a moment in every life when you start to wonder, if they don't see my worth, does that mean I don't have any? It's a haunting thought, isn't it? Because deep down, we've all been there after a breakup, a betrayal, a job rejection, or simply being ignored by someone we thought mattered. We start measuring our value by how others respond to us, their tone, their attention, their approval. But what if I told you that the only reason your worth feels fragile is because you've placed it in hands that were never meant to hold it? The Stoics had a radical idea about value. They believed that your worth doesn't come from recognition, but from virtue, from the way you live, the way you act, and the strength of your character when no one is watching. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." That means your value isn't tested when everyone loves you. It's tested when you stand alone and still choose integrity over approval. In our world today, we've been conditioned to treat validation like oxygen, as if being liked, noticed, or praised determines whether we deserve to exist. But the Stoic would look you in the eye and say, "You are not a performance. You are a principle." Let me give you an image to hold on to. Imagine a gold coin buried in the dirt. For years, it's covered by dust, unseen by anyone. People walk past it every day. Some even step on it. But does that coin lose its value because no one sees it? Of course not. Its worth is inherent. It doesn't need recognition to be gold. That coin is you. Maybe right now, you feel like you've been overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten. But your worth has not disappeared, it's simply unrecognized. The problem isn't that you lack value. It's that you've been measuring it through other people's limited vision. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. And you, your life, your journey, your soul, are the subject they know nothing about." The Stoics would tell you that the real challenge isn't being unseen, it's remembering your value when no one is watching. Because that's where true freedom begins. Think about it. How many times have you changed your behavior, softened your truth, or silenced your needs just to stay valuable in someone else's eyes? How often have you given away pieces of yourself just to keep the peace, to be loved, to be chosen? That's not love. That's a transaction. And when your self-worth becomes transactional, you start to bankrupt your soul. So the Stoic practice here is simple, but not easy. It's about redefining value on your own terms. Not through applause, not through attention, but through alignment with your principles, your discipline, your dignity. The first step is to withdraw the need for external validation. Not because you don't care, but because caring too much about being seen weakens you. You stop chasing recognition from people who are blind to your depth. You stop performing for an audience that isn't even listening. And you start asking yourself a new question. Am I living in a way that I respect even if no one else notices? Because that's what virtue is, living with integrity, even when no one claps. The second step is to build identity from the inside out. You become your own reference point. You stop outsourcing your worth to opinions, to moods, to algorithms. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every day, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop trying to convince others of your value. Let your discipline, your calm, your consistency speak louder than words ever could. For example, when someone disrespects you, your reaction defines your worth more than their action ever could. When someone doubts you, your persistence defines your worth, not their belief. When life knocks you down, your willingness to rise defines your worth, not the fall itself. That's what the Stoics called living according to nature, acting with virtue. The third step is forgiveness, not for them, but for you. Because resentment is just another kind of attachment. As long as you hold anger towards someone who failed to see your worth, you're still handing them the power to define it. Forgive them not to let them back in, but to let yourself out. Forgive, not because they were right, but because your peace is too expensive to spend on bitterness. Forgiveness is the final stage of freedom. It's saying, you no longer get to control how I see myself. And from that moment, you stop reacting and start radiating. I want to share a truth that might shift your perspective. When people stop valuing you, it rarely has anything to do with your worth. Sometimes it's because they've outgrown their capacity to appreciate you. Sometimes they're fighting battles you can't see. Sometimes they're simply not meant to walk beside you any longer. But none of those reasons change what you are. You are the gold coin, sometimes buried, sometimes unseen, but always valuable. The only question is, will you remember that when no one else does? Seneca once said, "If you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinion, you will never be rich." In today's world, that translates to this. If you live aligned with your principles, you'll always have peace. If you live chasing likes, attention, or validation, you'll always feel empty no matter how much you get. So today, redefine your value, not as something that needs to be granted, but as something that's already yours. Don't ask, "Do they see me?" Ask, "Do I live in a way that honors the person I'm becoming?" Because the moment you stop waiting to be valued and start living as valuable, everything changes. That's what the Stoics were teaching all along. Your worth was never meant to be a mirror. It was meant to be a flame. And a flame doesn't beg for attention, it simply burns, steady and bright, until the world can't help but see it. So be that flame. Even if they look away, keep shining. Even if they doubt, keep standing. Even if they forget, keep being. Because value that comes from virtue can never be lost, only remembered. Have you noticed how the most dangerous 10 seconds of your day are the 10 seconds after you feel triggered? Your phone lights up with a short, cold message. Your boss sends a blunt email at 9:58 p.m. A friend leaves you on scene. Your chest tightens, your jaw locks, your thumb hovers over the keyboard ready to fire off a paragraph that will feel good for 5 seconds and cost you peace for 5 days. That's the fork in the road, reaction or reason. Down one path is the impulse chasing, explaining, pleading, proving. The first shrinks your world to the size of someone else's behavior. The second restores the only kingdom you ever truly rule, your inner life. Stoicism doesn't say, don't feel. It says, don't hand the steering wheel to the feeling. So today, I want to give you a simple, repeatable way to take that wheel back. Think of it as a 3-beat pause short enough to use anywhere, strong enough to change everything. Beat 1. What's in my control right now? Not tomorrow. Not in a week. Right now. You can't control whether they text back, explain themselves, or apologize. You can control when you respond, whether you respond, the tone you choose, and the story you permit in your mind while you wait. When you separate the uncontrollable, their choices, from the controllable, your conduct, you stop bargaining with reality and start partnering with it. Control is small, yes, but it's always enough to act with dignity. Beat 2. Am I facing facts or my interpretation? Facts are boring. It's been 6 hours without a reply. Interpretations are dramatic. They don't care about me. In heated moments, the mind stops reporting like a journalist and starts writing like a screenwriter. Your job is to move from cinema back to newsroom. State one sentence of undeniable fact out loud. Feel how the emotion loosens when the story loses fuel. Facts create footing, fantasies create freefall. Beat 3. What action aligns with my principles? Ask the question future you will thank you for. What would I be proud to watch on replay a week from now? Maybe it's a clear boundary said calmly. Maybe it's a delayed response after sleep. Maybe it's no response at all. Principle is a compass. When you consult it, you move from being pushed by emotion to being led by values. Let's try this in real life. Scenario 1. The cold text. You receive a one-liner that feels dismissive. Beat 1. You can't make them warmer. You can choose not to mirror coldness. Beat 2. Fact. One short message. Interpretation. They don't respect me. Keep only the fact. Beat 3. Principle. I communicate with clarity, not spite. You reply. Tomorrow, concise and kind, or you decide no reply is the clearest reply. Either way, your peace, not your pride, made the call. Scenario 2. The late night email. Subject line. We need to talk. Your heart drops. Beat 1. You can't control the meeting. You can control your preparation and bedtime. Beat 2. Fact. A short email arrived at 9:58 p.m. Interpretation. I'm in trouble. Beat 3. Principle. I protect my health. I prepare, then rest. You write bullet points for the morning, schedule them to send at 8:30 a.m., and close the laptop. Reason 1. You'll meet the moment rested, not raw. Scenario 3. The family sting. A relative throws a sharp comment at dinner. Beat 1. You can't edit their mouth. You can govern your response. Beat 2. Fact. They said X in front of others. Beat 3. Principle. I set boundaries without drama. You say, calmly, I'm not okay with that kind of comment, and change the subject or step outside to breathe. Dignity without a scene. Here's the paradox. Choosing reason doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. Reaction is loud but weak. Anyone can lash out. Reason is quiet but strong few can hold the line. When you practice the 3-beat pause, the world inside you expands. Your attention, once captured by someone else's choices, returns to you. Your time slows. Your voice steadies. Autonomy self-rule comes back online. Let me offer a small toolkit to make this practical, especially when emotions run hot. Name breathe. Decide. 10 seconds. Whisper what you feel. Anger, fear. Take 3 slow breaths with your feet flat on the ground. Then choose one next action you can be proud of. The 20-minute delay. If you're tempted to send a prove my point message, write it, save it, set a timer. Reread after 20 minutes. 90% of the time, you'll edit out the ego and keep the essence or decide silence speaks better. One sentence fact. Write a single factual sentence on paper. If it contains mind reading, they think, they always. If, then plan. If I feel the urge to chase, then I take a walk around the block. Pre-made decisions beat heat-of-the-moment decisions. The dignity rule. If a camera played this back next week, would I be proud? If not, pause again. You might be thinking, but what if they take my calm as weakness? That's the old contract talking, the contract where your emotions are negotiable and your boundaries are for sale. Stoic calm isn't surrender, it's command. You're not avoiding hard conversations. You're choosing the right moment and the right words, guided by principle instead of panic. And here's what changes when you live this way. First, self-trust returns. Every time you pause and act by values, you prove to yourself that you can be relied upon under pressure. That's the root of confidence. Second, relationships clarify. When you stop reacting wildly, patterns stand out. Who respects your pause? Who requires your chaos to keep their comfort? Clarity is a gift, even when it's uncomfortable. Third, your world gets bigger. Reaction narrows your focus to the trigger. Reason widens it to your life. You start asking better questions, not, how do I win this moment? But what kind of person am I becoming through moments like this? Let's tie it back to the 3 beats with a simple mantra you can carry into any situation. Pause, see, choose. Pause. Create distance between spark and flame. See separate fact from fiction, control from illusion. Choose act by principle, not pressure. If you want a daily drill, try this for 7 evenings. Write down one moment you were triggered. Under it, answer the 3 questions in a few lines. No judgment, just training. After a week, watch how the intensity curve changes. You'll notice the first seconds after a trigger become breathable. That's you reclaiming the room inside your ribcage. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, just do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. In practice, the right thing is rarely the dramatic thing. It's the measured email. The boundary spoken once, clearly. The message not sent. The early night of sleep. The walk instead of the war. Reaction will call these small. Reason knows their sovereign decisions. So the next time your heart races and your thumbs are ready to sprint, meet yourself at the fork. Remember the 3 beats. Remember that your peace is too expensive to spend on impulse. And remember this promise kept by every person who has ever chosen reason over reaction. When you pause, your world doesn't get quieter because nothing happens. It gets quieter because not everything needs your fire. And in that quiet, you don't become less. You become the kind of person who cannot be moved by every breeze because you've learned to steer your own wind. Pause, see, choose. That's where your autonomy lives. That's where your life begins to feel like yours again. There comes a quiet moment in everyone's life, a crossroads that no one warns you about. Someone pulls away. Their tone changes. Their effort fades. And you feel that desperate urge to prove your worth, to fight for the connection, to show them why you're still worth staying for. That moment is the test. The Stoics called it the moment of the fork, when you must choose between desperation and dignity. Down one path lies reaction, chasing, explaining, lowering your standards just to be chosen again. Down the other lies restraint, holding your ground even when it hurts, choosing silence over begging, And make no mistake, both paths hurt, but only one heals. When you choose desperation, the pain festers. You start bargaining with your worth, rewriting your boundaries, apologizing for things you didn't do, dimming your light just to be tolerated. It's a kind of pain that poisons slowly. You wake up every day needing a little more of their attention to feel okay. But when you choose dignity, when you decide that you'd rather lose them than lose yourself, it's a clean pain. It burns, yes, but it burns away illusion. It reminds you of who you are beneath the noise. Marcus Aurelius said, "Just do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter." And sometimes, the right thing is not chasing someone who has already decided to stop seeing your value. Let's be honest, holding the line isn't glamorous. It doesn't look powerful at first. It often looks like silence, restraint, and solitude. It means resisting the impulse to send that message. It means refusing to perform for someone's attention. It means standing in the ache of uncertainty without betraying your own standards. But that's where real strength is built, not in being chosen, but in choosing yourself when it would be easier not to. Because here's the truth. People can sense when you've abandoned yourself. They can feel when your need to be accepted outweighs your sense of self. And once you start bending for love, you start teaching the world how to handle you as something flexible, negotiable, disposable. The Stoics didn't believe in pride for pride's sake. They believed in principle. They believed that virtue, your ability to act with integrity, even when it costs you comfort, is the foundation of all peace. Epictetus said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." And the opinion that hurts most in moments like this is the belief that being abandoned means being unworthy. That's not truth. That's just the echo of fear. When someone pulls away, it doesn't reduce your value, it reveals theirs. Their choice says more about their readiness than your worthiness. So, instead of asking, ask, what standard am I setting right now for how I will be treated in the future? Because every relationship you'll ever have, romantic, professional, or personal, will rise or fall to the level of that standard. Holding the line doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop betraying yourself to prove it. There's a moment in every person's healing where you realize not every battle deserves your participation. Sometimes walking away isn't losing. It's leading yourself back to self-respect. And yes, it hurts. The silence hurts. The distance hurts. But pain with integrity builds peace. Pain with compromise builds regret. You can either ache for a while now or ache forever for what you lost inside yourself trying to hold on to someone else. Think of it like a scar. The pain of holding the line leaves a mark, but it's a healed one, a reminder that you chose growth over approval. The pain of abandoning yourself, though, that becomes an open wound. It gets infected with resentment, self-doubt, and shame. That's why the Stoics called discipline a form of freedom. It's the strength to endure discomfort without surrendering your principles. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And adversity doesn't always look like disaster. Sometimes it looks like the quiet decision to not call, not chase, not shrink. That is proof of who you are. Now, here's something to remember. Holding the line doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. It tells the universe, I am not desperate for what devalues me. It tells your future self, I can be trusted with my peace. It tells others, this is the standard. This is the level. I will not compromise. And something beautiful happens when you live by that standard. You stop attracting chaos disguised as connection. You stop chasing love that needs convincing. You start drawing people and situations that meet you where you stand, not where you bend. There's a saying in Stoicism that the pain of discipline weighs ounces, but the pain of regret weighs tons. When you hold the line, the weight is temporary. When you abandon it, the burden is endless. Ask yourself, what do I want to carry, the light ache of self-respect or the heavy chain of self-betrayal? In the end, the line you hold isn't against them, it's for you. It's the invisible boundary between your peace and their power. It's the voice inside you whispering, "Not this time, not again." And when you listen to that voice, you stop seeking love through endurance and start finding it through alignment. You stop mistaking tolerance for kindness. You stop confusing attention for respect. You start realizing that your self-worth is not a door for others to walk through, it's a foundation you stand on. So, when the moment comes when you're standing at that crossroads between desperation and dignity, take a breath and remember, you're not losing them. You're gaining yourself. Hold the line, even when it shakes, because that trembling is your transformation. That silence is your freedom. And that pain, the clean, honest pain of self-respect, is the beginning of a peace that will never leave you again. There's a certain kind of silence that used to terrify me. You send a message, and hours go by, no reply. You share something meaningful, and the response is no warmth, no curiosity, no energy, just indifference. And your mind starts spiraling. Did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest? What changed? That's the moment you're standing in front of the mirror of indifference. It's uncomfortable because that mirror reflects something deeper than the other person's silence. It reflects you, your inner state, your emotional stability, your ability to hold peace when the world gives you nothing back. The Stoics had a saying, "You cannot control the external world, only your judgments about it." Indifference in this light isn't an insult, it's data. When someone withdraws, when they stop reacting, you are being given information not about your worth, but about your dependency. Do you still know who you are when no one is watching? Can you still act with integrity when applause is gone? Can you hold calm when validation disappears? That's what the Stoics called inner climate stability. Because life, like weather, changes constantly. People come and go. Some bring sunlight, others storms. But your inner atmosphere, your mind, your discipline, your principles can remain steady. Here's the problem. Most of us read indifference as rejection. We make it personal. Someone's silence feels like proof that we're not enough. But that's not Stoic thinking. That's ego thinking. The ego wants constant recognition. It feeds on being seen, praised, chosen. But the Stoic self doesn't need an audience to have worth. It knows that attention is unstable, but virtue character is permanent. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, once wrote, "If anyone can show me I am wrong, I will change. But if they simply ignore me, that's their concern." That's detachment, not arrogance, not apathy, but a calm refusal to let other people's moods decide your peace. So how do we practice this? How do we stop letting indifference shake our center? The answer isn't to become numb. It's to become observant. The next time someone's energy fades, don't react. Don't assume their silence means you're unworthy. Treat it like data. Maybe they're distracted. Maybe they've changed. Maybe your role in their life is complete. Whatever it is, your job isn't to decode their mind. It's to protect your own. Imagine your peace as a temperature setting inside you. When others grow cold, you don't have to match their chill. You adjust your inner thermostat instead. You stay warm through discipline, routine, reflection, self-care, and purpose. The Stoics believed that emotional steadiness wasn't a gift. It was a skill. They trained it like a muscle. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal every morning and every night, not to record what others did to him, but how he chose to respond. Seneca walked daily to clear his thoughts. Epictetus, born a slave, reminded himself, "You may not control events, but you control your reaction to events." These weren't abstract teachings. They were survival tactics. You and I can do the same. When the silence hurts, don't escape it with distraction. Sit in it and write. When indifference triggers anxiety, don't scroll or chase. Breathe and observe. Ask yourself, what story am I telling about their silence? Is it fact or is it fear? What can I control right now? Each time you do this, you shift from emotional reaction to rational reflection. That's Stoicism in action. Here's a personal truth I've learned. The moments that hurt the most are often the ones that reveal how dependent we've become on external feedback. When someone's indifference makes you feel invisible, that's your cue to rebuild the relationship that matters most, the one with yourself. Because if your peace depends on being noticed, you're living as a reflection, not a source. And reflections disappear the moment the light turns away. Real peace begins when you stop performing for attention and start practicing alignment with your values, your discipline, your inner calm. That's why I call indifference a mirror. It's not there to insult you. It's there to show you where you're still unsteady. Think about it. When someone treats you coldly and you stay centered without closing your heart or begging for warmth, when you no longer chase validation, the people who truly see your worth begin to find you naturally because you've become grounded, calm, magnetic in your steadiness. You stop trying to convince. You start to embody. And the more you practice, the more your inner climate stabilizes. Your peace stops fluctuating with every compliment or cold shoulder. You become like a lighthouse, steady light in the storm, guiding, not grasping. So let's talk about how to build that stability the Stoic way. Start with journaling. Write what you feel, not to vent, but to clarify. When your emotions are written down, they lose their chaos and become information. You can analyze them, separate fact from story, and reclaim control. Then, create habits that ground you. Exercise, meditate, read philosophy, take quiet walks, eat mindfully. These aren't luxuries. They're anchors. They remind your nervous system that safety doesn't depend on others' approval. Finally, live by your values daily. Because when your actions are guided by principle instead of emotion, you stop swinging between extremes. You become internally consistent. And consistency over time becomes peace. Epictetus said, when something happens, so when someone's indifference hits you, remember, you can't force warmth where it's gone. You can't pull attention from where it's no longer offered. But you can decide that your worth isn't up for negotiation. You can decide that silence is just silence, not a verdict, not a mirror of your value. You can choose to let the indifference of others become a reflection of your strength. Because when you learn to see apathy as information, not identity, you free yourself from the emotional seesaw that runs most lives. So the next time someone grows distant, don't panic. Instead, look inward. Ask yourself, what does this moment reveal about my stability? And if you find turbulence, build your climate, steady your air, because the world outside will always change. But your peace, that's your responsibility. That's your let indifference be your mirror. And when you finally learn to look into it without losing your reflection, that's when you'll realize nothing and no one has power over your calm anymore. There's a powerful kind of freedom that doesn't look like victory. It doesn't look like winning an argument, getting an apology, or finally hearing someone say, "You were right." It looks quieter, almost invisible. It looks like taking a deep breath, unclenching your fists, and saying to yourself, "This is how it is, and I can still be at peace." This further town and a better rounds of Seth, the great mate of fast would be I. That's what the Stoics called acceptance. And let's be clear, acceptance is not surrender. It's not giving up. It's not saying, "I guess this is fine," when it isn't. Acceptance is a strategy. It's the decision to stop wasting your energy on what you wish you could control and to redirect that power toward what you actually can. Because the truth is, most suffering doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from our refusal to accept that it happened. Think about it. How many times have you replayed a conversation in your mind, hoping that somehow, in the 1,000th replay, the ending would change? How often have you waited for someone to finally realize what they did, to finally understand, to finally care? That's the trap, the illusion that life owes you closure through another person's behavior. But waiting for others to change before you allow yourself to heal is a kind of prison you build from the inside. Epictetus said, "We suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them. In other words, the event is neutral. It's our resistance that multiplies the pain. Acceptance, then, is liberation not because it changes what happened, but because it changes what happens next. The Stoics had a simple way of seeing life. They divided the world into two categories: things within our control and things beyond it. Within our control, our thoughts, our actions, our choices, our character. Beyond our control, other people's decisions, the past, the future, and chance. That's it. Everything you'll ever experience fits somewhere on that list. And yet, most of us spend 90% of our emotional energy fighting what's on the beyond side. We keep arguing with reality. We keep saying, it shouldn't have happened. But the Stoics would ask, should? According to who? Reality doesn't obey our personal sense of fairness. It just is. And the moment you stop resisting what is, you create space to influence what can be. That's where real power begins, not in control, but in clarity. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, faced betrayals, wars, plagues, and the death of his own children. Yet, he wrote in his private journal, "The obstacle is the way." He didn't write that as a cliché. He wrote it as survival. He understood that every obstacle only becomes unbearable when you demand that it shouldn't exist. When you accept it, you regain the ability to act with purpose. So let's make this practical. When you face pain, rejection, loss, disappointment, acceptance doesn't mean you approve of it. It means you acknowledge it. It sounds like this: yes, this happened. Yes, it hurts. But this is real, and I can choose how I respond. That's power. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I lost someone I loved deeply, not to death, but to distance. No big fight, no clear ending, just slow silence. And for months, I lived in resistance, trying to decode, trying to fix, trying to convince. Until one morning, I realized something simple but life-changing. I was trying to negotiate with reality. I was trying to make life go backward. That was the day I stopped asking, "Why did this happen?" and started asking, "What can I do now?" The answer was acceptance. Not cold detachment, but warm clarity. I stopped needing their apology. And for the first time in months, I felt free. That's the paradox. Acceptance feels like loss at first, but it's actually the beginning of peace. Acceptance isn't about lowering your standards, it's about aligning them with truth. When you stop fighting what's outside your control, you stop wasting your energy on fantasy. You stop waiting for people to become who they're not. You stop holding your happiness hostage to someone else's choices. And you begin to live again, not in reaction to life, but in rhythm with it. The Stoics practiced this daily. They didn't just talk about peace, they trained for it. Marcus Aurelius began each morning reminding himself, "Today you will meet people who are selfish, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful." Not to be cynical, but to be ready. He knew that expecting the world to behave ideally is the fastest way to lose your balance. So he accepted imperfection as part of life's design, and because of that, he stayed calm when others crumbled. You can do the same. When someone disappoints you, remind yourself, they are who they are right now. When life doesn't go your way, say, "This wasn't in my control, but my reaction still is." When fear creeps in, ask, "Am I deciding from clarity or from panic?" These small shifts change everything. Here's something most people miss. Acceptance is not the end of effort. It's the beginning of intelligent effort. When you accept what's real, your decisions become cleaner. You stop chasing fantasy outcomes. You start moving from strength instead of desperation. It's the difference between swimming with the current and thrashing against it. Both take energy, but only one gets you somewhere. Seneca once said, "A wise man adapts himself to the world. The fool insists the world adapt to him." Acceptance, then, isn't defeat. It's alignment. It's seeing life clearly, not as we wish it to be, but as it is, and still choosing to act with courage, compassion, and purpose. So when you find yourself holding on to a why, waiting for something or someone to change. Ask yourself, what am I really waiting for? Am I resisting life or am I responding to it? And then choose to let go, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Because freedom doesn't come when everything goes your way. Freedom comes when nothing has to. Acceptance doesn't end pain. It transforms it. It turns chaos into clarity. It turns bitterness into wisdom. It turns powerlessness into presence. So if you're in that place right now, waiting, hurting, wishing something would be different, take a deep breath. Look at what's real. Accept it. And from that calm place, decide what deserves your energy next. Because when you choose acceptance, you stop being a victim of life and start becoming its master. There's a truth most people never learn until they're exhausted. Your emotions are currency. Every conversation, every argument, every overthinking session, it's all spending. And just like money, emotional energy is limited. Once it's gone, it's gone. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology did. They saw emotions as a kind of inner capital, something you must invest wisely, not waste recklessly. But here's the problem. Most of us are emotionally bankrupt because we keep pouring our energy into leaking containers. We keep pouring water into cracked jars, as the ancient Greeks used to say, trying to fill people, situations, or goals that were never meant to hold us. Think about it. How many times have you replayed an argument in your head 1,000 times just to feel like you're winning in a conversation that ended days ago? How often have you tried to prove your worth to someone who already made up their mind about you? How much peace have you spent trying to earn love, approval, or closure that was never truly yours to buy? That's emotional inflation, spending beyond your means on things that will never pay you back. It's the fastest way to go broke inside. The Stoics would say, stop investing in what doesn't yield virtue. In modern terms, if it doesn't make you wiser, calmer, or freer, it's not worth your emotional budget. Let's break this down like a real economy. Your emotional capital is your focus, patience. Your income comes from practices that strengthen you: reading, reflection, discipline, purpose. Your expenses are the things you give energy to: relationships, work, reactions, social media, worry. And here's the key question. Are you running a surplus or a deficit? Are you saving energy for growth? Or are you constantly borrowing against your peace, going into emotional debt just to keep certain people comfortable? I once had a friend who was always in crisis mode. Every week it was something new: drama, complaints, endless calls about problems they never solved. And I kept showing up, giving advice, giving energy, but nothing changed. One day I realized I wasn't helping them anymore. I was funding their chaos. That was the day I learned one of the hardest Stoic lessons. Not every investment deserves your emotion. Marcus Aurelius said, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." If you spend your days thinking about problems that aren't yours to fix, your mind becomes a home for noise. The Stoic practice, then, is emotional minimalism. You stop chasing, stop convincing, stop over-explaining. You live from the inside out, not the outside in. And this brings us to a simple but brutal truth. You don't need to prove you're enough. You need to live your values. When you argue with someone about your worth, when you try to explain your intentions, justify your heart, or chase their approval, you're draining emotional capital that could have built your future. The Stoics didn't waste time defending themselves against opinions. They knew that dignity doesn't argue. It demonstrates. Virtue doesn't talk loudly. It lives quietly. So the next time you feel the urge to prove yourself, pause and ask, am I trying to be understood? One of those paths leads to freedom. The other leads to exhaustion. Emotional economy isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about becoming conscious, knowing where your energy flows, and choosing whether it deserves to. For example, when someone misunderstands you, you don't have to correct them every time. That's emotional tax for a debt you don't owe. When someone tries to pull you into endless drama, you can stay calm and say, I hope it works out for you. That's not coldness. That's budget, discipline. When you feel tempted to chase approval, You remind yourself, I'm not a product, I'm a principle. Because when you live by principle, you stop paying emotional rent to people who don't even live in your world anymore. Let's talk about emotional debt, something most of us carry without realizing it. Emotional debt happens when you spend energy you don't have, trying to earn feelings that aren't for sale. You borrow time, sleep, and peace to maintain appearances, to keep relationships afloat, to be nice. But the interest on that debt is high. It comes as burnout, resentment, and self-neglect. The Stoic solution? Balance your emotional books. Audit your energy like a banker. Ask yourself, what am I investing in that never grows? Who drains me but never replenishes? Which emotions am I overspending on anger, guilt, fear, validation? Then cut unnecessary expenses. Not because you don't care, but because you do. Because you finally care enough about your peace to protect it. In a Stoic sense, peace is your highest ROI, your return on integrity. When you invest in things that align with your values, peace compounds. When you spend on things that contradict them, chaos compounds. So instead of asking, is this worth my time? Ask, is this worth my peace? And if the answer is no, you owe yourself the discipline to walk away. Seneca once wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." And that's true emotionally too. If your mind is scattered between regrets, resentment, and reassurance, you're not living, you're leaking. The Stoic way is to consolidate your emotional energy into what truly matters, the relationships that make you grow, the work that aligns with your principles, the thoughts that make you stronger, because every minute spent defending your worth to the wrong people is a minute stolen from the life you could be building. Let me leave you with this. You are not an infinite resource. Your energy is sacred. Your emotions are capital. And every act of self-restraint, every time you choose peace over proving, every moment you walk away instead of arguing, that's profit. So manage your emotional economy like your life depends on it. Because in a way, it does. In the end, peace isn't something you buy. It's something you earn through clarity, discipline, and the courage to stop pouring into broken cups. Remember, you don't owe anyone your exhaustion. You owe yourself your evolution. There's a moment in life when you realize you've been living as an echo, not a voice. You've been waiting for someone else to notice you, to understand you, to finally say, I see you. But here's the hard truth. If you have to beg to be seen, you've already given your power away. The Stoics had a word for the place where that power lives, hegemonikon. It's an ancient Greek term that means the ruling center, the inner command post of your mind, your reason, your judgment, your choice. Everything the Stoics believed, peace, strength, dignity, starts there. Because the world doesn't control you through what it does. It controls you through what you believe about what it does. And when you forget that, you stop being the source of your life and start being a reaction to someone else's. So how do we come home to that inner command center? How do we stop searching for validation and start becoming it? It begins with a simple, radical decision to rebuild your inner infrastructure. Not the kind that impresses others, the kind that sustains you. Rebuilding your routines. Rebuilding your body, your mind, your environment. Rebuilding the quiet places inside you where peace doesn't depend on applause. You start by doing something the world has forgotten how to do. You turn inward. In the noise of modern life, everyone's chasing to be seen, heard. But the Stoics remind us, attention is not nourishment. It's fast food for the soul. Exciting, addictive, but empty. The real nourishment is self-command. It's waking up early not to post about discipline, but to practice it. It's walking without music, just to hear your own thoughts again. It's creating a home that feels like peace, not performance. Because when you rebuild yourself from the inside out, something incredible happens. You stop craving validation. You stop needing someone to see you because you see yourself. Let me tell you something. I learned the hard way. There was a time I tried so hard to be understood. I explained, justified, defended to people who had already decided what they wanted to see. And no matter how many words I used, it was never enough. Until one day, I asked myself, what if the goal isn't to be understood, but to understand myself so deeply that I no longer need to explain? That question changed everything. It's what the Stoics meant when they said, withdraw into yourself. Not to isolate, but to integrate, to rebuild your center so that the storms of others can't shake you anymore. You see, when you stop depending on others to define your worth, you start discovering something powerful. You already have enough. You realize that peace was never lost. It was just buried under noise. You realize that being unseen by others is not the same as being invisible. It's just a sign that you're evolving beyond their line of sight. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, leader of millions, wrote nightly in his journal, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will forever flow if you will forever dig." That's what you stop chasing the fountain outside the validation, the attention, the approval, and you start digging inward, finding the wellspring that never runs dry. So how do we start? First, rebuild your habits. The Stoics didn't preach grand theories, they practiced daily rituals. They woke early, wrote reflections, took walks, trained their bodies, and kept their minds sharp. They treated discipline like art, something beautiful. When your habits are strong, your emotions have structure. When your days have rhythm, your thoughts find peace. And from that rhythm, your power grows quietly. Second, rebuild your body and your space. Your surroundings reflect your inner order. A chaotic room, a neglected body, an overstimulated mind. These are not small things. They're signals. Clean your space, move your body, simplify your environment not for aesthetics but for clarity. Third, rebuild silence. We live in a world allergic to quiet. People turn on the TV just to avoid hearing their thoughts. But silence isn't empty, it's full of information. Sit in it long enough, and you'll start hearing something most people never hear. That's what happens when you return to the hegemonicon, the inner command post. You become less reactive. You stop letting external noise hijack your emotions. You start responding instead of reacting. You move from chaos to clarity, from dependency to sovereignty. And that's what it means to become the source. You are no longer the echo of others' opinions. You are the voice of your own reason. You are the calm eye of your own storm. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't about arrogance or isolation. It's not about saying, I don't need anyone. It's about learning to need people rightly, not from emptiness, but from fullness. When you're centered, relationships become expressions of wholeness, not negotiations for worth. You give freely because you're not trying to buy anything. You love without fear because rejection no longer threatens your identity. You listen without defensiveness because you're no longer trying to prove your value. That's the paradox of the Stoic path. When you stop chasing to be seen, you start shining naturally. People begin to notice your calm not because you ask them to, but because peace is magnetic. So let me ask you, when was the last time you felt full from within? When was the last time your sense of worth didn't depend on someone's message, compliment, or silence? If the answer feels distant, that's okay. It's not because you're broken. It's because you've been living too far from your center. Come home, rebuild your habits, clear your space, protect your silence, and let that stillness remind you you've always been the source. Because the truth is, no one can truly see you until you see yourself. And when you finally do, the need to prove anything fades, replaced by something far stronger. Quiet confidence. The kind of confidence that doesn't shout, doesn't chase, doesn't beg. It simply is. That's the Stoic way, not to escape the world, but to become so grounded within yourself that nothing outside can shake your peace. When you reach that point, you no longer worry about being noticed. You simply live with integrity, depth, and presence. And the right people, the right opportunities, the right peace all begin to orbit around that calm center you've built. Because when you stop searching for the source, you realize you've been it all along. Sometimes, healing doesn't begin with a grand realization. It begins with a pause, a single moment where you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop performing, where you just stand still long enough to ask, what am I actually feeling right now? And why? This is the heart of Stoic practice, not philosophy as theory, but as action. Because no amount of wisdom matters if you can't apply it in the moments that test you most: the silence after rejection, the uncertainty after being ignored, the emptiness that lingers when you stop trying to please. So let's talk about how to practice inner power, one small step at a time. Not to look strong, but to become strong, quietly, from the inside out. Step 1. Pause, breathe. Step back. When something hurts, when someone goes silent, rejects you, or leaves you confused, your first instinct will be to react, to text back, to demand answers, to chase clarity. But that's the exact moment when the Stoics would tell you, pause. You don't need to have the last word. You don't need to fix the silence. You just need to stop feeding the fire with your panic. Take one breath, slow, deep, then take another, and another. It's not weakness to step back. It's wisdom. Because when emotion runs high, perspective runs low. Seneca once said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." That's true for every emotional storm: grief, rejection, shame, confusion. So when you pause, you're not avoiding emotion. You're creating space for reason to catch up. When you breathe, you're reminding your body that you're safe, even if your heart disagrees. When you step back, you're telling your mind. That's your first victory. Small, invisible, but powerful. Step 2. Identify the real pain. Here's something we often overlook. The surface pain isn't the real pain. If you feel crushed by someone's silence, ask yourself, why does it hurt so much? Is it really about them? Or is it about an older wound, the fear of not being enough, of being forgotten, of being left behind again? The Stoics didn't believe in running from pain. They believed in investigating it, because awareness transforms emotion into understanding, and understanding gives you back control. So name it. Say it out loud if you can. It's not just the silence. It's the memory of every time I felt invisible. It's not just rejection. It's the story I tell myself when someone leaves that I must not be worth staying for. See, when you identify the real pain, you stop fighting shadows. You stop trying to fix people who only triggered what was already waiting to be healed. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you interpret it that matters." Finding the real wound allows you to change the story. And once you change the story, the pain loses its power over you. Step 3. Stop playing the seeker. Stop playing the seeker. Stop playing the seeker. In fact. This is one of the hardest steps: to stop being the one who's always searching for closure, always reaching out, always checking if the door is still open. The Stoic lesson here is simple but brutal. If something requires you to chase it, it's not peace, it's dependency. You can't heal while playing detective. You can't move forward if you keep refreshing their page, rereading messages, or imagining what you'll say if they ever come back. You're not the seeker anymore. You're the centered one. So practice letting go of control. Don't check. Don't wait. Don't perform for attention. Because every time you stop seeking, you build self-respect. And every time you choose dignity over desperation, you make a deposit in your inner strength. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That includes letting people drift away without chasing their approval. Step 4. Build boundaries from integrity, not anger. When you've been hurt, it's tempting to build walls, to shut down, become cold, stop trusting. But Stoic boundaries are different. They're not walls built from pain, they're fences built from clarity. You set boundaries not to punish others, but to protect your peace. You say, "I only engage with people who are honest, kind, and consistent." Not as a threat, as a principle. Because every boundary you set teaches the world how to treat you and reminds you of your own worth. Ask yourself, Does this relationship nourish me or drain me? Is there mutual respect, or am I constantly overextending? Am I being honest about what I need, or am I playing small to stay liked? Boundaries are not about distance, they're about direction. They keep your energy flowing toward what supports your growth, not what feeds your chaos. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." In other words, choose reciprocity over rescue. Step 5. Anchor yourself, the ritual of remembering. When life feels unstable, the mind looks for anchors, something solid to hold on to when emotions start to drift. The Stoics used short affirmations, what they called reminders to the self. Simple, clear, grounded. When you feel yourself unraveling, try one of these. I remain. I stand worthy. Always. I do not chase peace. I create it. Say it aloud. Write it down. Whisper it when the old patterns try to pull you back. Because these small phrases are more than words, they are instructions to your nervous system. They remind you who you are when everything around you feels uncertain. Over time, that repetition becomes your new reflex. Where once you would have panicked, now you pause. Where once you would have begged, now you breathe. Where once you would have bent to be chosen, now you stand. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. Let me tell you something important. Healing doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. It means you'll recognize pain faster, and you'll know what to do with it. You'll pause before reacting. You'll trace the wound before blaming. You'll walk away without needing closure. You'll love with open hands, not desperate ones. That's what growth looks like. Not perfection, but practice. Not constant peace, but the ability to return to peace again and again. The Stoic path is not about escaping emotion. It's about mastering response. It's about living with awareness so deep that nothing, no silence, no rejection, no misunderstanding can make you forget your worth again. So, the next time life tests you when you're tempted to chase, explain, or overthink, stop, pause, breathe, step back, and remind yourself, I remain, I stand worthy. I am the calm within my own storm, because that's the ultimate Stoic freedom, not to escape the chaos of life, but to carry stillness wherever you go. There comes a moment after the silence, after the confusion, after the endless overthinking, when you realize something powerful. You don't need to win the argument. You don't need to be understood. You don't need to make them see your worth, because your worth was never theirs to see. It was always yours to know. That's the final lesson of Stoicism. Not revenge, not indifference, but clarity. The kind that comes when you stop pouring your emotional capital into what you can't control and start investing it where it truly belongs, in yourself. See, the Stoics had one simple rule for freedom. Withdraw your emotions from what you can't command. And that includes people's opinions, their silence, their treatment of you. You can't control who stays, who values you, or who understands your heart. But you can control whether you hand over your peace every time someone disappoints you. That's the one Stoic trick. Not manipulation, not armor, just self-command. Choosing to direct your energy toward discipline, dignity, and reason, instead of chaos, emotion, and pride. Let's be honest, when something or someone you cared about starts slipping away, it feels like you're losing a part of yourself. You try to hold on, to fix it, to prove that what you had was real. But here's the truth. Loss doesn't erase your value. It simply reveals where you misplaced it. Maybe you placed it in someone's approval, maybe in being chosen, maybe in needing to feel needed. But when you step back, when you let go, you start to see your worth was never diminished. It was just buried beneath attachment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you lose something external, remember that it was never truly yours." And what he meant was this: the things that can be taken from you were never the source of your strength. They were just mirrors reflecting what was already inside. When the mirror cracks, it doesn't mean the light disappears. It means it's time to find the source again within yourself. Living the Stoic way isn't about pretending you don't care. It's not about playing cold or detached. It's about caring deeply but wisely. It's about loving without losing yourself, helping without draining yourself, giving without expecting a return. Stoicism teaches that emotion isn't the enemy. Attachment is. You can feel sadness, anger, longing, you just don't have to become them. You don't have to let those feelings dictate your actions. So when someone wrongs you, the Stoic doesn't seek revenge. Revenge gives away control. The Stoic simply acts rightly, calmly, consistently, without drama, and keeps moving forward. That's not weakness. That's mastery. Because anyone can react, but only the strong can remain composed. The modern world rewards noise. It tells you that silence means weakness, that calmness means not caring, that detachment means you lost. But the truth is the opposite. It takes strength to stay quiet when provoked. It takes courage to walk away when ego wants to stay. It takes wisdom to choose peace over proof. That's the Stoic's strength, measured, not loud, peaceful, not passive, grounded, not numb. Because peace is not the absence of emotion, it's the ability to feel everything and still remain centered. So what does it really mean to live stoically? It means no retaliation because revenge costs your peace. It means no pretending because numbness isn't strength, it's avoidance. It means no self-betrayal because acting out of desperation always leads you back to regret. Instead, you act with reason, with dignity, with quiet conviction. You do what's right, not what's dramatic. You walk away clean, not bitter. You stop asking, why didn't they see my worth? And start affirming, I never needed them to. Seneca said, he who is calm and moderate in adversity will be free of misfortune. And that's the point. Freedom doesn't come when life stops testing you. It comes when nothing outside you can take your peace away. So, if you remember nothing else from this message, your value is not negotiable. Your peace is not for sale. Your time is not to be wasted where respect is absent. These are not walls, they are standards. They are the quiet contracts you make with yourself. Every time you choose integrity over impulse, stillness over chaos, peace over pride. Every time you walk away from a fight that doesn't deserve your spirit, every time you refuse to beg for love or attention, every time you choose your sanity over their approval, you're not being cold. You're being conscious. You're living the Stoic way. Here's the paradox. When you stop needing others to validate your worth, you become magnetic. Your silence starts speaking louder than their words. Your calm becomes intimidating, not because it's fake, but because it's real. Because you've stopped auditioning for a role in someone else's life and started owning the leading part in your own. That's what choosing yourself really means. Not ego, not arrogance, but alignment. You decide that you'll no longer beg to belong in spaces that don't honor you. You'll no longer sacrifice peace for connection. You'll no longer trade your dignity for temporary validation. You simply live with such quiet strength that those who once overlooked you start wondering how you found peace without them. And that's when you know you've finally come home to yourself. So take this as your final Stoic declaration. My value is not negotiable. My peace is not for sale. My time is not spent where respect is absent. These aren't just boundaries, they're reminders of identity. They tell the world, I am not here to prove anything. I am here to be. At the end of every storm, when the noise fades and the dust settles, that's the moment you say to yourself quietly, steadily, I remain. I remain calm. Even when others are chaotic. I remain kind. Even when others are cruel. I remain whole, even when life tries to break me. Because peace is not something you find, it's something you choose. And when you choose it enough times, it becomes who you are. So walk forward now, not as someone who lost something, but as someone who remembered everything that truly matters. Your worth, your integrity, your peace. You remain.